when I was 21 and my ex-boyfriend was 19, he took his own life. It was like 13 Reasons Why. Like there was a whole video note where he, essentially said it was my fault. When he died, holding that blame, carrying that blame was just too much. And it was like, I will either die, like I cannot handle this grief, or I will drink. And that's what it became. And drinking at the time looked like this brilliant escape.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free, safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Rennebaum, a suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Yep, you've guessed it, another wonderful episode this week. This week I am speaking with Izzy. I know her last name, but last time we talked, she didn't share it, so I'll leave it at that. I spoke with Izzy a couple years ago. She was in early recovery and she was on TikTok. She created this amazing community. She would do lives and she would let us all into her life as she's struggling with addiction and trying to get sober in early recovery. So a couple years ago, she was, I think, sober for about 3 months. And then the proverbial poop hit the fan. Well, you'll just have to listen. She's in New Zealand right now. And again, I'll let her tell you why. Please check out all the links in the episode show notes. There's links to get you to the merchandise store. You can buy me a coffee if you feel so inclined. You can go to the YouTube channel, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, and that's gaining more and more followers and stuff all the time. So please, if you like the episodes on audio, you'll like them too on video. So go check out the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, watch some videos, check them out. And if you have about 10 seconds to spare, could you please rate and review the podcast on Apple or iTunes or whatever it's called? That would be amazing. You can even do it while you're listening. And speaking of listening, let's take a listen now. So without further ado, I give you Izzy. Last time we talked, you were 3 months sober. I think you had relapsed one time before that, or maybe a couple, or maybe many, I don't know.
Maybe a couple hundred.
I suppose.
It was like I had like that epiphany moment, which I think I discussed in the last podcast, but I got sober and that lasted a week. Then I relapsed again. And then I got much more time in. So that was like the 3 months. And then 3 weeks after you and I spoke, I relapsed again. So,
right.
What day is it today? Is it
Depends what country you're in.
We might be literally hitting a year and a half within like this week, I think. So
nice.
Then I relapsed again. So yeah, it's part of the process, right? Part of the journey.
Part of some people's journey. I mean, I guess
for mine,
I relapsed too, I guess, but not after treatment. Like once I went to treatment, then it was all I learned a lot. So, but the amazing thing is, were you in England then?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So since then you've also moved back to Boston and got even more sober. And now you're living in New Zealand, working at a harm reduction place, giving out Narcan. And do you give out like needles and stuff too?
Yeah, we got clean needles, we got test strips, we got sterile water, syringes, filters. We got everything you need, and it's all free. Most of it. You have to pay for the tourniquets, I think.
Tourniquet. Yeah.
But yeah, most of it is free. It's absolutely phenomenal.
So it's pretty amazing.
Like fate somehow ended up here.
That's incredible. Like, I know it happens. It happens to people, but it's just been so incredible that you make it public and you do your lives all the time on TikTok, and it's like you've just kind of invited the world to watch you on your journey.
Yeah, it's been pretty.
Oh, and you also, since you started your own kind of like support group too for a while there online.
I have been busy since I last spoke to you, I would say. Incredibly so. That actually stemmed from a need to take a break from TikTok. So I think after I spoke to you in 2022, I had just barely started live streaming. And those are sort of, as you know, a support group type thing. So I did that for another year. ish, maybe, yeah, maybe even more than that. And then TikTok started to have more of a negative effect on me than a positive one. I think there was a lot of comparison. Maybe we can talk about this more, but there was a lot of self-doubt that was coming with it. And I would say stuff like, I'm in my flop era. Here I am, like, how many months sober? Like, just, but devastated by other people's success, which also made me feel bad because I didn't want to be jealous or envious or whatever, but I was, and it was just, it wasn't good. So I took a break from that, and that's how I got into facilitating a support group, which I think has been probably the most important thing I've ever done before. I would have once said that about the TikTok page. But...
Are you still doing that or no?
Nah, I had to stop because the time difference was a bit complicated. I am at the bottom of the world. That's what they call it here, bottom of the world. And it's kind of true. But yeah, it would have been too much. We had a very emotional final meeting. It was great though.
Which I missed.
I know.
I can't remember why.
That's okay. Perfectly right. There was a lot of crying. So it wasn't much of a support group meeting and more of a goodbye, my friends. I'm gonna miss you going out into this big world.
Well, we're talking now, I guess. So that's
true. And you're okay. I'm glad I was able to stay in touch with you. One of the hardest things I think about hosting a support group is when people go away. You're never sure if it's because they need you more than they ever have or because they don't really need you and you're okay. So it's nice to keep in touch with people and know that you are in fact okay. It is okay.
Yeah. That's something I learned working in addictions was, some people, they're like on Facebook and on Instagram, like just every day, twice a day sometimes. And then suddenly they're not there. And then your brain goes, oh, where are they? And you're, like you said, sometimes they just are fine, but a lot of them are, I'm not going to lie, a lot of them are dead. I just found out this morning another person I care about is gone from addictions. And these aren't like junkies nodding out in the street people. These are just, all types of class systems. And like addiction it's not discriminating anyone anymore. So yeah, it's rough.
We get people coming into the exchange. There is no look, I guess, for addiction. We get everyone comes in. Everyone looks different ages, different backgrounds. But yeah, that's one of the things I think because so many of us didn't make it out and it's like pure luck that I'm here and your friend isn't. Like that's it. And so it makes it a little better to be like handing out the needle that might keep someone alive, the sterile needle. It makes it feel slightly more okay because I do live with that
right
pain, the loss, and I think sort of all of us do.
In New Zealand, is the stigma the same as it is in the U.S.? Is it worse?
Yeah. I don't know that it's worse, actually. It's pretty bad everywhere, especially against people that use IV drugs or that use drugs intravenously. In fact, I won't go into too much detail, but I actually went in to get a tattoo very recently, and I was like, I work at the needle exchange, and I've heard you guys, like as tattoo artists and stuff, you need clean needles and sterile supplies, obviously. So we've worked in conjunction with tattoo artists. And I was like, yeah, I worked for the needle exchange. And the guy was just like, I hate junkies. I don't like it when junkies come anywhere near my shop. Like, I hate them all. Like, I don't want anything to do with them. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and I think because I don't look like a person who struggles with addiction, like people feel empowered to say this kind of stuff to me because I don't fit their stereotype. But it made me feel awful because I was like, what if he knew the truth? What if he knew what I've been through? Like, would he still say that? And would he, like, it feels horrible to know people think that way. So stigma is alive and well in this country, but not at my workplace.
And I get why some people say that, like if they had a sibling or a best friend or something, like, I'm not trying to defend this person, but they were hurt somehow or something. Yeah.
I think because they have in their head what, like they would have that. I understand having relationships with people that have struggled with addiction can be very challenging, but lumping us all together that's where the discrimination comes in, I think. So.
That's right. Yeah. exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I was hoping like New Zealand was like on the forefront of like some amazing.
We were the first country to establish a needle exchange, though, all the way back in the 80s. So we have been on the forefront of
Oh.
reduction for a long time, which is pretty cool. So for every person that discriminates, there is another person who's saying that's not an accurate depiction of what addiction is like. You know, there's good people here fighting too, which I think is awesome, especially compared to the UK. Like I found there's many more support resources for people who are struggling with addiction here. So far, I've been here for 3 weeks though, so
You're still
this is my
jet-lagged.
initial observation.
I know that since we've talked to you, opened more about some of your traumas, opened up a bit more, and made some videos. And is that it, or do you talk about it on lives?
I talk about it on live streams, probably more than I used to, because I've done a heck of a lot more therapy than I think I had in 2022. I think one of the cool things about getting sober, or at least stopping drinking, was even with my relapses, which tended to be like 3-day bender type things, like most of the time I was sober and I was actually able to do the work in therapy, whereas before it was like I was in therapy, I'm doing that, I'm like facing this stuff, and then I would get out of session and drink my face off, like, you know, so I wasn't actually doing the work. And since getting sober, therapy started working and I started getting better, and then I needed to drink less, and then I drank less and got even better, you know, so it was like for once a positive spiral upward in therapy.
Yeah, good, because you were kind of tiptoeing around some of it a bit, and which was fine. I wasn't going to pressure you, but
yeah, I mean, you can ask me anything.
One of the big things that triggered your addiction, I guess. Well, I mean, you were using anyway, but you were having a hard time with grief and guilt and whatever comes with a boyfriend taking their life and basically blaming you.
For your listeners that do not know the story, when I was 21 and my ex-boyfriend was 19, he took his own life. It was like 13 Reasons Why. Like there was a whole video note, horrible thing where he, essentially said it was my fault. And I had been drinking before. I was a bit of a binge drinker, but it had never been like an everyday thing for me. And when he died, it was so severe that like holding that blame, carrying that blame was just too much. And it was like, I will either die, like I cannot handle this grief, or I will drink. And that's what it became. And drinking at the time looked like this brilliant escape. Like I didn't have to feel my feelings, thank God, you know, because it was just simply too much. So that's, when it kicked into high gear, I think, with the drinking. And that's when people started to get concerned. However many years running in zigzags away from that trauma, trying like anything I could do to block it out because I could not cope with that grief.
How old are you now?
26. Just over 5 years since everything went down.
And I mean, like you were in university in a different country across the ocean, and it wasn't like you had friends and family that you trusted and loved by your side when this was happening. So that's, I could imagine.
It was intense. And honestly, I feel like with suicide bereavement, I don't know if you've experienced that. I feel like maybe we discussed this, but like it's sort of it honestly didn't matter how many people I had around me. I was so alone in this relationship with him. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was still in a relationship with someone who had died. And no matter how many people surrounded me and loved me and stayed in my room till 4 a.m. to make sure I wasn't going to do anything stupid to myself, like it didn't matter. I was stuck. It was just me and JJ. That was his name. So.
Yeah, I've spoke with parents who have lost children to suicide and stuff, and it is a completely different grief. Apparently, I don't want to ever know that, but
honestly, it is the biggest trauma I've ever gone through, and hopefully will stay that way. I can't imagine. I don't know. I don't want to.
You've peaked. Your trauma's peaked.
I'm good now. I'm done. I've lived enough.
And now you just help people not to experience trauma.
Yeah, or I try. But it's interesting that you bring that up because I've been thinking about suicide. I've been thinking about suicide a lot lately. That came out completely wrong. I have been thinking a lot about my own...
The subject of
the subject of suicide.
Right.
because I think at that time when I first started drinking about JJ's death, I had never attempted suicide, and I think I was 20 at some point in the blur of the last 5 years. I also attempted, and for a long time it was like the combined trauma of trying to figure that out plus his, and I just didn't really understand it. But having done it myself and sorting out those feelings helped me understand him a little bit more. And I think that's also what's facilitated the healing. I think I didn't understand so much before.
So what is that understanding?
It's just that mental illness can take control to the point where it is no longer you. Or like I was literally, I wasn't there. Like you wouldn't, if you spoke to me, I wouldn't have been Izzy. You know what I mean? And I think I had always thought, like, he did it, and he did it because of me, because, you know, he implied that. But now I know that to be at that point, you are so beyond. Like, if I had talked to JJ, he wouldn't have been JJ, I think.
Right.
And that helped me understand it better.
So you learned that, because I mean, you're extremely irrational. Like, so even though he was saying whatever, those were completely irrational thoughts. And so now you learn to not personalize it. It's just, he was not well.
Yeah. And now I can say, you know, it had absolutely nothing to do with me, because if I had died, it would have had absolutely nothing to do with any of my family members or anything like that. Even though to them, I'm sure they would have thought it did, but I was so far beyond. So yeah, I've been thinking about that.
So in your musings, it's not a bad thing. You're just like, you're actually able to accept it and see it for what it is. You're not like dwelling on it. You're just
thinking
well,
about
good.
Yeah.
A healthy musing.
Yes. I mean, it's sort of what I do all the time. People are always like, is addiction your whole personality? And I'm like, well, yes and no. Like, yeah, I think about it all the time, but it's in a different context now. I used to think about drugs all the time. Now I think about recovery all the time, which I think is perfectly fine. There's a lot of judgment around that. But just go off. If being healthy is your personality, like, great. That's like amazing. Good. Like, keep going, you know? So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If that's your identity, then what the fuck do you care?
Yeah, totally.
Guy.
One of the other things that made all of the suicide stuff more okay was being able to give back with the support group, because there were definitely people who were experiencing intense suicidal emotions, and I was able to, with the help of the rest of the group, like, it wasn't just on me, encourage them to get help and save themselves, you know, and so that makes it a little better too. It's like, you know, I couldn't save him, but I saved me, and I can help these people. Obviously, I'm not the savior, but you know what I mean. I can facilitate.
Right.
That feels good too.
It's it's a peer support group, and everyone's got a little piece of everybody in there, and that's kind of, I know you're not big on the 12-step groups, but that's kind of the 12th step is being the sponsor of someone, and whoever you're sponsoring thinks the sponsor is saving them, but it goes both ways, because
exactly. No, 100%. I feel like I've ended up doing a lot of the 12 steps just through recovery. Like, all of the themes are kind of there. I haven't done them in the order, and I haven't done them within the group and within the fellowship, but I have done a lot of them just by virtue of recovering. So they're onto something with these steps.
Right? Have you, I think it's step 8 and 9 is make a list of people you're willing to make amends to, and then step 9 is making these amends. I mean, have you done something similar to that? Yeah,
definitely. There were friends of mine. I had friends of mine that put up with so much of my crap. It was the people that I had actually fully driven away that I had to make amends to the most, because there were some people that, like, for some reason they could tolerate it better, and they almost wouldn't take my amends. And maybe we've got some work to do on that front, actually. Now that I think of it, we might have some work to do going forward, but there were definitely friends that were like, Izzy, we love you so much. We got to take a step back. Like, you can't keep calling us at this hour. You can't keep whatever. And I definitely have had to go back to them and be like, nah, you were right. Like I was even angry at the time when people were stepping back from me. That's how they would phrase it. Like, we just need to take a step back. And I was like, well, why? Like, I can't take a step back from this. This is my entire life. And now you're stepping away from me when I need you the most. And there was so much resentment. So before I could make amends with them, I had to make amends with myself. I don't know if that's one of the steps, but that's what I did. And then I went out to them like, listen, I know it sounds wild, but I am different now. And it wasn't just one conversation, certainly. Like, it was a thing, like, I'm sober now, I'm really doing the work this time. But I had to sort of prove it to them. So I guess that's part of the process of making amends. And I feel remarkably lucky that most of the friends that had to stop talking to me have come back. And not in the same way. Like, things changed, and that's on me. But they're still there. And they're okay. And I'm okay. So it's okay. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm the same way. I think there's some people that are very supportive, but they're like, I don't know if I want to get as close as I was to him, but you know, it's like, and I get it. That's fine too. And I mean, I've grown and changed too. So, I mean, there's people I had to cut out of my life when I got sober.
Yeah. So, there are some people I have not made amends with because they need to make amends with me first. And
that's not exactly how it's supposed to work, but that's fine.
We're all works in progress, and do I have some bitterness? Maybe, but there we go.
Well, I kind of learned how to forgive people by getting, because you really have to humble yourself to ask for forgiveness. So I kind of learned, like, okay, this is very humbling. If someone is asking forgiveness for me, you know, I'll be more willing to take it because I just know how hard it is to ask for forgiveness. But there's some people that every 2 weeks they're asking for forgiveness. And it's like, you know what? Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, the process of making amends is more than just saying I'm sorry. So
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
I would certainly accept certain people back if they really put in the work to make amends. And that's what gives me hope and gave me hope with my friends, like the knowledge that if people came to me and apologized, I would have it in my heart to forgive them, which means that my friends who love me also would have it in their heart. And that gave me hope. And it was true. So.
Is there any relationships you were thinking of specifically that you miss?
I don't have any friendships. I've been lucky in that, as far as the ones that I really massively fucked up in, I have made amends, and those friendships are okay.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
I think I've probably mentioned there's this one girl who I was drinking with. Like, we were she also knew my ex who had died, and so she, same spiral that I was in, and we would spiral together sometimes because it felt more comfortable. So we would...
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, completely. So I would be drinking alone in my room, and I would bring her up, and she'd be drinking alone in her room, and we'd drink alone in our rooms together, and it felt a little bit better. But eventually I realized that by enabling that, I was killing her, and she was killing me, and I was killing me, and she, we were slowly destroying our own lives and each other's lives. And so I had to stop speaking with her with all the love in the world. And I explained that to her, like, the only reason I'm doing this is because I love you, and I'm working on loving me. And once I do, it will be easier once you do as well. But I haven't gotten back in contact with her. And she's definitely one of the people that, like, I hope to God she gets out and in a heartbeat want to be her friend again. So it's sad to even think of that.
Do you know if she's still using or not, or like you have no idea?
I don't know. Yeah. I hope not. I've seen that she's posted on Instagram. I still check in on her.
Ah, right.
I can't help it. I just want to make sure. So.
Well, it's funny too, because like when you do get sober and you're caring for someone, and because I mean that was a very self-aware choice you made, actually saying I got to take a step back. But then it is hard to ask how they're doing because you don't want to, some people, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile, and it's like, the whole spiral starts again. But she might be sober, but you're scared to make that contact just in case shit goes haywire again and you start trauma bonding again or whatever. And yeah, it's a bit of a delicate dance. And I mean, I would love to know how she's doing as well for you. I'm very curious too, but at the same time, it's probably a safer thing to do what you're doing just in case. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, you're absolutely right. It is the safer thing. And it was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, because I was saying goodbye to a friend who I cared about, and she had the same trauma as me, and it was heartbreaking. But I was also saying goodbye to someone that did enable me. So someone that would drink with me when no one else would, and that was hard. So
Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is supported by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 20 years. If you live in Western Canada, especially the prairies, or spent any time here, you've probably fueled up or bought groceries at a co-op. You might even have a co-op number, or 2, or 3. You know if you know. But co-op is not just a gas bar or grocery store. Although co-op is those things too, it's a different kind of business. Co-op members are owners, and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at co-op.crs. One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple, and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can?
Oh, the other thing, and I don't know if you've come across this, but there was almost an element of, yes, she would enable me, but we also almost got into a competitive place. And that might have just been on my end, but because I compare myself like crazy, and I'm working on it. But one of the things I would be like, her trauma is worse than mine, or her drinking is worse than mine, or she's used this drug and I've never used that drug. So until I use that drug, I'm not, I don't have a real problem. I used to say all the time, I'm not a real addict. Well, my life just, I look back, I'm like, oh my God, you do not have to get worse in order to qualify or to receive help, right? But I thought
it's called justifying.
Yeah, and I think she was doing the same thing. Like, she was looking at me and being like, well, Izzy's been through this until I've been through that. Like, so there were so many reasons why we were intertwined, and most of them weren't healthy. But there's hope. I mean, if I could do it, she can do it, right? Like, she can get out of this. I believe
For sure. I've talked to people that have been like, I'm not comparing you, but people that have lived on the streets in the worst places, and they're sober. So yeah,
I almost said come out stronger, but sometimes I don't think that's true. I think sometimes we just go through hell and then we claw ourselves into a place of relative stability. I don't know that I'm strong now, but I'm more peaceful.
I'm 7.5 years-ish sober, and I'm still learning all the time. It's like it's like any other kind of skill or talent or anything else. It's like you're a 15-year-old and you're good at hockey, but you don't really hit your prime and start really understanding all the exercises you were doing when you're 15, 16 until you're 22, and it's just becomes second nature. And then you open up your mind even further and you see things and you get more life experience. It's no longer just everything's making more sense now. You know what I mean? And it's quite a beautiful spot to be in, to be honest with you.
It gives me hope to hear you say that you're 7.5 years. That's cool. I'm like a baby in sobriety right now. But I was speaking with my friend. It's interesting that you bring up 7.5 years. And it's sort of like what I was saying about relapse being part of the journey. I was speaking with a friend. Someone in her meeting had said that she relapsed after 6 years, and it was necessary for her to grow and learn. And my friend took that as, well, I should relapse to grow and learn. And it's part of the journey, right? So I may as well just do it now. And so whenever I hear people that have been 7.5 years, or even people will come on my live streams 30, 40 years, and it's okay, so it doesn't have to be part of the journey, right? And I find that very encouraging. You can learn and grow without going back now, So congratulations to you.
No, thanks. I mean,
thank you. Thank you for being an inspiration.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I still get cravings and temptings, and it's my mind will go I bet you I could probably start smoking weed again. That's probably okay. I'll just do it once in a while. And then,
like, I was never addicted to that pill. It's a different, like,
yeah. This is like, I'm talking like last week, my mind's still doing that. And then,
Oh, my goodness.
the next day you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that.
I was vacuuming my room yesterday and I found these random little crystals on the floor. And 2 years ago, we know exactly what I would have done with those. Even though they were definitely just like, I don't fucking know, drywall or something. Like, they were not. But I would have done anything because I would have been like, well, I don't know what it is, so it might not be. Like, so, but yeah, so I still get those thoughts. But I was immediately like, no, come on now. So that's what I think, like, the thoughts aren't going away per se, but I'm getting much better at being like, well, come on now, we're not doing that. And here's why. Like, it's not just I'm not going to do that. And then that's like end of conversation. It's sort of like with myself, like, I'm not going to do that because this is where it would go and I don't deserve that or want that anymore. So, yeah.
You kind of, what do they say? Play the tape forward, I guess, or whatever.
Oh my God. I've started, like, my brain has started not, like, I don't even think about it. I just use the smart tools. I don't know. Have we talked about smart recovery on here? Or do you?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Playing the tape is one of the things I talk about all the time in smart recovery, which stands for self-management and recovery training. So all of the principles, it's sort of like AA, but if AA were based in cognitive behavioral therapy instead of spiritual 12-step type stuff. And I found it wildly helpful because I'm very therapy minded. Not that I like cognitive behavioral therapy that much, but that's just sort of how my brain works. And they have a lot of different tools, and one of them is playing the tape forward. And at first, it was very much like, okay, I'm freaking out. I'm going to open up my smart recovery book, and I'm going to read about playing the tape forward. And now it's like, I have a craving. My brain just plays the tape forward. And then I realize that I don't want or deserve that. And so I've internalized these things. And that's something that's also made it easier, I think. And that just takes time.
Are you starting to recognize, because I don't know if I was recognizing addiction in other people when I was using, I was just like, hey, this guy's a drinking buddy or whatever. But are you starting to, like, friends or family or whoever, coworkers, well, maybe not here, but you'd be like, I wonder if I should, I'm seeing patterns reflections of my own patterns at one time.
Yeah, it's funny. I never used to see that because I would see anyone else drinking or smoking or whatever, like, as a reason for me to do it. So I'd be like, oh, hell yeah, your behavior is so in line with everything that is good. Like, let's do it. And I have noticed. But I never bring it up. I feel like you have to be really close to that person to bring it up. Especially because I don't know why. Like,
right. You've never planted seeds even, be like, oh, like the conversation's going.
Like, my meetings might be good for you. Like, you should try those.
Yeah,
stuff like that in passing. But the truth is, like, if somebody had told me to stop drinking, well, actually, we could go into this. This ties back into the suicide thing. But, like, my friend did. I moved into his house, and there was it was sort of an ultimatum, like, you can live here, yes. Like, and I didn't really have anywhere else to go. It was very chaotic. But you have to be completely sober. Like, and that's it. That's the rules. And when that happened, I did it for a week, and then I tried to kill myself because it was just impossible for me to cope without the alcohol. And so I feel like you're walking a very delicate line when you're telling people or encouraging people not to drink, and you don't know what's going on underneath, because you might be encouraging them and then they get sober, and because they can't self-medicate in the absence of proper mental health care, or, not self-medication, just medication, like, you might be making them worse off without even knowing. And that's a very delicate line. It's a tricky one.
You heard the term dry drunk. It's like, okay, well, they're not drinking anymore, but they're also not healing why they drank in the first place, so they're still miserable. But sure, they're not drinking. And
sometimes that's just unbearable, so I would never want to put someone in a more unbearable situation. But I can talk a lot about my own recovery. And that's sort of how I do it. I talk about how much, like, healthier I am, how much more, like, cognitively here I am. Like, I'm just, every part of my life has gotten better, essentially. And I talk a lot about that. Hopefully that will inspire people to do the same thing as me, or try, get the help, because it's out there too. And I think people don't realize that. So when I say I run a support group, or I have these different support groups that I've been to, it might open up the idea of going to a support group in someone who might not otherwise have thought about it, you know? So that's my way of intervening without intervening too much, you know?
Right. It's that time again for that Somebody Special segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank. Brought to you by Co-op. This is a segment where you get to give a shout out to someone that's been in your corner when you've needed it.
So I would say that there's actually two answers to this question. I'm going to be like that. The first answer, the simple answer, my mom. I would not be anywhere I am today without her constant support. I love her to the moon and back, and she gives me faith when I am losing mine. And the more complicated answer to the question, and I think more honest answer, is that there was no single person who helped fill my emotional tank during my recovery. And that's still the case. I have a very wide network that it took a long time to build so that I would have all the support I need in case that one person wasn't around. So if I can't call my mom, I can call my friends. If I can't call my friends, I can call my support group ladies. If I can't call them, do you see where I'm going with this? So I think it's really crucial to have as much support as possible. Therapists, that's a big one too. There's so many people I could never have done this without.
This has been another Somebody Special brought to you by Co-op. So in AA, there's a thing, you're only an expert in your own story. So you don't ever give advice. You don't know the other person's stuff at all, like you said. So you're just an expert on your own story. So you tell your own story and what worked for you and what helped you and all that stuff. And
exactly.
In
live streams, I always have to preface everything with this is me. This is completely me. You do you. It's none of my business. That's my catchphrase on there. People will come on and be like, I'm drinking right now. And I'm like, that is absolutely fine. Your recovery is none of my business. I'm just talking,
And sometimes that's harm reduction for them.
Yeah, exactly. I think very frequently drinking is harm reduction, which is so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is.
I'm actually
Cali sober.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, are you
still Cali sober, but I smoke half as much as I used to. Maybe. Maybe.
Is it legal in New Zealand?
I had a nightmare. Maybe I shouldn't confess. But no, it's actually just funny because I wasn't actually in possession of anything. But there was keef in the bottom of my grinder, and I had a nightmare that the police came and arrested me because I had a grinder. Maybe this is a sign, but I'm so used to it being legal. And the only reason it's not legal is because of one vote. So it's a very relaxed culture here around that. Not wildly worried. And again, if it comes down to that versus drinking or that versus whatever pill is I'm in the mood for, right? Smoke weed all day. That's where I'm at. If that's what it takes. Or if it's between that and suicide. I'm 90% sure if I had just smoked a bit on the day that I attempted, then I wouldn't have attempted. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I do believe that's true.
And weed was really bad for me.
Yeah.
I loved
it's one of those things, right, that can be so harmful.
Yeah, I had done it long enough, but that was for a long time and a lot. But I don't know, I was getting to the point where it was really affecting my anxiety and stuff. And, I was justifying it because it was helping me with my anxiety. Well, I was having anxiety because I was not high. So I was like, no, this is called withdrawal. Mm-hmm. It's not anxiety.
Yeah. You got to do a lot of soul searching if you're going to smoke weed. You have to be careful with it.
Yeah. That my wife was like, no, you stop everything or you can go live somewhere else. And I was like, Well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And she was right, though, right? I got sober for myself. I did. But, sometimes I do need a slap upside the head.
Yeah. There's always a multitude of reasons why we do it. At the end of the day, yeah, it's none of my business how other people choose to go about their recovery. Quit weed? Great. Don't quit weed? Also great. Currently using clean needles? Great. Or sterile needles. We don't even say clean versus dirty, which I appreciate.
Right.
I don't even say I'm clean anymore. I just say sober because I was never dirty,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, using a sterile needle versus not, go the fuck off or go the heck off. That's awesome, right? Pardon my friend.
Go the heck off. Take off, eh?
Yeah, because it's harm reduction. So whatever recovery means to you, even if it's using sterile supplies, like if that's a step in the right direction for you, then yeah, that's awesome.
I'm curious that because you've been diagnosed with bipolar as well,
Mm-hmm.
how has getting sober affected your bipolar? Is it like hardly an issue now because you're sober? Was using making your bipolar symptoms worse?
Probably. Almost
Yeah,
certainly. Like,
probably.
I mean, I
Yeah,
don't think
probably.
ever makes anything better, especially with mental health. You think it does, but it doesn't. So, or physical health. It's literal poison. It's so funny the way drinkers will defend alcohol. Like, oh my god, guys, at least be self-aware. You're drinking poison. It's not helping you. Like, it's good for your heart. No, it's not. Or if it is, it's bad for everything else. Anyway, so yes. No, my bipolar. So yes, it
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
made it worse. But I think antipsychotics are what made it better. I think also finding the right medications. Like I haven't had an episode since last August because I went on Latuda, which is the magic antipsychotic for people with bipolar. At least most of the people that I've heard that go on it, I'm like, whoa. And actually, I had wanted to go on it years ago, but it was like $800 a month after insurance, and I had really good insurance, so that was out of the question. I was like, well, I guess I'll just die instead, like literally, because it was utterly unaffordable.
It's like that meme. Guess I'll die. The old
Yeah,
guy.
that's my option right now. No, but I got on it because it went generic it's been 2023, like January 2023, and then I had a terrible manic episode in August of 2023, and they were like, well, try this one, and I was like, really? I can afford it now? And I'm so happy I went on it
On it.
because
Right.
it absolutely saved my life, better than any other medication I've ever been on. I still have symptoms of bipolar sometimes, but barely at all. Like I don't have big episodes. Thank God, because that was exhausting.
It's being managed.
It's managed very well. I'm very impressed. It's actually, you can't get it in New Zealand. You have to import it from Australia. And I was joking with my aunt, like, if they won't do that for me, I'm going home. But I wasn't really joking. Like, if I can't get this medication, then I will make any decision necessary to get it because it is so life-saving. Interesting country. They also don't have Adderall here, which is so stupid because the stimulant abuse rates in this country are through the roof. Like, by far, meth and Ritalin are the two most abused drugs here. Heroin, barely a thing here. Cocaine, not really a thing. But those two?
Fentanyl?
Oh, not really. Like, maybe.
Really?
Not even 20 overdoses on that. They do have nitazene,
Jesus.
which is a thing I haven't really heard of in the US, but it's like more potent than fentanyl, and that is making it. It was, oh man, I don't remember the whole history, so don't quote me on this, but it was developed in China and then was like taken off the market because it was too fucking strong. Like we're like, we don't even need this, like for medical reasons. Let's just stop that. But it's made its way out into the world, so that's the bigger worry than fentanyl at the moment.
Man, fentanyl around here is brutal. Fentanyl and meth, and I mean they're putting fentanyl in everything now too. It's like
it's in the U.S. It's really truly unbelievable. But yeah, like I was saying, the methamphetamine and methylphenidate are the two most widely used drugs, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they have such a tight hold on. Like they don't have amphetamine here for ADHD. I don't think it's a coincidence that people are abusing ADHD meds because they can't get they can't get a prescription for it because it's so tightly controlled. So I think a lot of people are self-medicating out here. I don't have the stats to back that up right now, but I bet if I looked it up, I'd be right, because that's like the thing with opiates, right? Like you stop people from getting them. They're in so much pain, they go to the street and get them because you need it for pain reduction. It's the same as relieving the symptoms of ADHD. So,
well, I know people are so worried about, because I'm in recovery, and it was like a year ago I started on Concerta, which is a type of stimulant, and I don't crave it. It's not like I'm like they say it's very addicting. Well, But for people who need it as medicine, it's just medicine. Like I'm not, I don't get hooked to cough syrup when I have a cold. Like it's just, I take it and I need it and it makes me better. And
Exactly. That's not how you respond to a crisis. My God.
I know, we'll take medication that works for people away.
Oh, literally makes me so mad to think about. But that's all about what harm reduction is. Like that helps because people who are, the people that need harm reduction most are probably the people that are suffering with mental illness or neurodivergency. And so harm reduction stuff is actually deeply important for that group of people, that community, because sort of like I was saying before, I was drinking so that I wouldn't kill myself. Like if people are using Ritalin off the streets so that they won't have these symptoms of ADHD, then they should be able to do that safely. And that's where harm reduction comes in. We also have drug checking services at my work where you can come in anonymously, hand them your drugs, sit there while they test them, and then get them back and leave again. And I don't know if that exists in the US. I don't think it does in the UK, almost certainly. But
it does in Canada.
It's pretty damn cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go off Canada.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, I don't know. Well, Canada's a big country. In the city not far from me that has harm reduction, they do that. I can't say if everywhere in Canada does it, but actually the one just not far from me, I think they're the only place in Canada where they have, like, you can actually smoke in there too. So you can smoke your drugs. It's the only place where there's like a safe smoke. Does your place have that, where you can smoke?
I don't think we have safe facilities now, but we should do, because that is a fantastic idea. Like what better way to prevent someone from overdosing than having someone on site who knows and is trained in Narcan, who can call services. Like, people are going to use drugs. That's just the reality. They have for all of history, and they will continue to. Like, it's not going to stop. So the best thing we can do is make it safer until people find recovery. Like, the goal obviously is for people to live happy, healthy lives at the end of the day, whatever that means for them. But to do that, they have to be alive, right?
Exactly. That's a hot button issue in my province right now. I'm trying to not make this about my province and me right now. It's like, I know it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, we do.
Putting all the money in treatment beds. It's like, but everyone's dying.
Yeah.
Like who's going to take these beds? Like, and we're already understaffed with the beds we have. Who are you finding to staff these goddamn? Anyway. Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, I'm so proud of you. I've been, as you, because, throughout the last little while, sometimes you're on the live, sometimes you're taking a break, sometimes whatever. But yeah, it's been so wonderful watching you and to see what you're doing now. And you have like your own community that follows you and is inspired by you. And I'm sure those people now have people that are inspired by them. It's
a beautiful chain, right? Like, the things that I say might get said to someone else, might get said, So, yeah, sometimes all it takes is one nice thing being said. You don't even know the impact that you have on other people, which I absolutely love. Yeah.
That's why I try to get people to share the podcast and stuff. It's like, you have no idea who might need to hear something that one of my guests is saying right at that moment. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have so much love in my heart for the whole community. That's the best thing. And I feel like that's like the crucial thing in healing for me, has just been being surrounded by community and people that care. Because when you feel cared for, it's just so much easier to heal. And yeah, I think that community does exist. It doesn't have to be just around you in your town or in your city or whatever. Like, it can be online. We had this ongoing running joke back in 2022 at the beginning where I would end my live streams with "Thank you for coming to my TED Talk," because I would have this whole rant about whatever. And I've actually just started writing a TED Talk. Like, I'm going to apply to do a TEDx thing in Wellington. So that's not till April 2025. And I have to do the whole application process. So it's not, but that makes me want to cry, because everyone has said, "Izzy, one day you're actually going to do this." Like, my whole online community has, and now it's happening. And I think the truth is it's only happening because of you guys. So. Now I'm gonna cry. Okay, not the place.
Yeah, you did all the work. As my counselor would say.
Not alone. Not alone.
Thank you so much, Izzy. It's, well, you know how I feel, and yeah, I'm so proud of you. I love you. And I think it's amazing that you are doing what you're doing and helping so many people and just getting more and more stronger all the time in your recovery. So congratulations. And yeah, I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much, Co-op, for sponsoring this episode and so many other episodes. It's very nice to be partnered up with a wonderful company like you. I say this every episode, and I mean it. I love doing talks for organizations and for schools and stuff. So if you're somebody who organizes that kind of stuff, please reach out to me if you're looking for a speaker to talk about addictions or mental health or podcasts or ADHD. Yeah, I can do it in person or virtually. I can do pre-recorded stuff, whatever you need. So please reach out to me at bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And until next week, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Goodbye.